It is a super calm day or morning so far, and the sun is trying to peek through. There's been hints of it so far, but it's been mostly cloudy, but fingers crossed we get a little bit more sun later. But we're at Jay Cooke State Park, which is near Duluth, Minnesota, and trying to get in about a 5-mile hike or so. We'll see how it goes, but as you saw at the beginning, a nice river, and then we're out more in the back area, I guess, and then we'll come back up along the river as I navigate a downed tree here. So far it's just been kind of your typical trail path, but nobody's out here, so we have the place to ourselves, which is also kind of nice.
I'm starting off with the obligatory wide shot. I don't know about you, but I don't find wide scenes like these particularly interesting. I much prefer finding the hidden beauty along the way, almost like a treasure hunt. At least this kind of shot sets up the context for the location. I'm drawn to interesting texture like this, but it's difficult to create an image of such an angle. Hopefully the sharp focus and color draws the viewer into a scene like this. Here's another close-up showing old bark making way for the new bark. I do like how the white is a strong contrast to the shadows in the background. The rock formations in this area were quite impressive. I brightened up the foreground and darkened the background to provide a bit more separation of the subject. All of my images from this hike are edited using the classic negative film simulation from my Fuji camera. I use that color profile as the baseline, which I really enjoy. But this one could have used a bit more color perhaps. I decided to keep them all in the same profile for consistency, however. I like the greens mixed in with the whites here. These mushrooms were pretty prevalent throughout the park, and many seem like they were in prime bloom, like this one, if that's how you say it. This isn't a very interesting landscape shot, but more of an interesting mushroom. What caught my eye here was the way the trail was higher in the foreground and then dropped down as you get to the baseline of the trees, which you can't see. I thought it created some interesting separation within this nice set of trees. And spring is definitely on the way, and it's fun capturing these close-ups that isolate the subjects like this.
We're about 2.5 miles into the hike and haven't seen a single person here. I think everybody's more towards the beginning of the park where the St. Louis River goes through, and there's some rapids, and it's quite pretty. So these back trails don't get used as much. It's a little muddy too, but not bad. But besides seeing no people, we haven't seen any wildlife either. So not even a squirrel running by. So kind of eerily quiet back here, but still very relaxing.
I mentioned earlier my preference to find these hidden spots for photos, and this would be a good example. This isn't a grand view of a rushing river, but I like the simple composition of a nice tree standing over a winding creek. It took about a 3-mile hike to come across this view, which makes it more meaningful to me. I like how the classic negative film simulation renders the greens. It really stands out in photos like these. I added some negative clarity to the lighter background in an attempt to make the photo a bit more dreamlike, but I'm not sure it worked. I also like finding these views along the trail. I bet it would look really nice in a few weeks when the leaves are filling in. I don't normally take photos like these, but this one appealed to me for some reason. The picnic table was a few miles away from the main entrance, but it still looks like it has seen some things over the years. It was still sturdy despite its rough appearance. As I mentioned earlier, the rocky landscape of this part of Minnesota is something else. It makes shots like these more dramatic. I combined multiple exposures on this shot since it was a very high contrasty scene. I think it turned out okay. The trails were mostly packed dirt or grass, but sometimes you navigate a lot of roots and rocks like this. I like how this image adds to the context as well of the area. Somehow, some of the positions of the tree trunks stand out to me as more pleasing than others. I'm not sure why that is, and it's probably only interesting to my set of eyeballs, but the middle tree flanked by the two larger ones along with the row of trees way in the back caught my eye. And this is my final shot. I really like the shape of the tree trunk and how it seems to be at one with the rocky base. And as you look up the tree trunk, I like how it mixes nicely with the leaves.
to say Jay Cooke State Park is the winner. The first part of the trip was more gray and overcast, and not super exciting, but this is a lot of the view that we saw in the second half of the hike, or at least the last quarter of the hike. And then the sun came out for a while, so it was a lot of fun. Beautiful park. We had most of the trail all to ourselves, especially the back, I don't know, 3/4 of it, but hopefully some nice shots turned out. So if you stuck around to the end, I appreciate it. Hope to catch you again on the next one. Take care.